Oxygen kills lockdown, a ray of hope, ending national suicide, protecting lives, restoring our livelihoods and way of life, and rebooting the economy before disruption and anarchy break out. Millionaires and those with tens of thousands of pounds in savings will ride out the lockdown, even if it continues for another month or for months. How many ordinary people have tens of thousands of pounds of savings? We were sent into lockdown based on a lie, apparently not because of a scam, but because the politicians knew they had no idea what to do and wanted room to manoeuvre. Maybe lockdown would slow the virus while they failed to come up with a cure, a vaccine, or a sensible way forward. So they destroyed our way of life, our economy, our livelihoods because they had zero competence to deal with the situation and were afraid they'd be blamed if people died and they did nothing. They were right. The public and media must therefore take the blame, along with the politicians, for the national suicide that all of them have insisted upon. And now they wait in their homes, their heads stuck so far in the sand it puts Australia at risk, and lockdown isn't working. The blue line shows no lockdown projection, and cases had already matched that line perfectly, defying logic with zero cases avoided or lives saved by lockdown. Cases have continued in a true linear fashion, constant new cases on a linear scale, and cases now exceed no lockdown. Cases have given up all pretense of acting like a virus. The damage to organs done by the virus is a matter of record. The virus effectiveness against people with prior conditions is a matter of record. We have never disputed that, but it supports the suggestion of a source I trust that we cannot dismiss this as the flu. Even recovery may be life-changing. I accept that. The public wants a miracle cure. No one should die because we live in a world or country where death is illegal or immoral. Someone is to blame, and so doing nothing is unacceptable, while doing something has turned into national suicide. It would be easier if it really was a scam, and not apparently incompetent children left in charge of the asylum and advising we all stick our heads in the oven and turn the gas on to kill the virus. Lockdown isn't working. It is national suicide ordered by people with no idea what else to do. Fortunately, regardless of opinion as to the source and its content, it does describe a simple approach that we can test. Scientists and doctors can test this, and it should not be difficult to do so. It is so simple a test and so useful a test that if you look up pulse oximeters on Amazon, you will find a whole host of them available. Hint, I've ordered 8 or more to test and compare, and I shall be publishing my findings. What are they testing? Blood oxygen levels. It is understood already on YouTube that higher blood oxygen is a good thing. Oxygen and ozone treatments. Look it up, do the research, become informed. It is a harmless observation that oxygen is good for you. It is a harmless test to see what your level is. It is a cheap piece of equipment to buy for your whole family. £12 to £60 with prime fast delivery on items costing around £40. It will take a moment to test your levels. You cannot be harmed by knowing them. If you decide that oxygen is irrelevant to your life, then fine, ignore this. But seriously? From my brief research, I am fascinated to see the amount of knowledge, material, devices available for both oxygen and ozone treatments. I had a stack of ozone generators, ionizers, years ago, but they made the apartment wall dirty. I tried peroxide, tablets for a while, and found my vitality seemed significantly higher. Regardless of the information and hints provided by the source, I would consider an inquiry into oxygen and ozone for health purposes to be perfectly rational. In fact, despite the fact that I personally cannot emotionally fear the virus, and despite the fact that I want to do what's best for you and the country, I want to try these machines, oxygen generators, ozone generators, because they are fun and affordable. To me, at least, £150 to £300. Not ideal, but given their relevance, sure, why not? I am not saying spend hundreds of pounds on an oxygen generator or ozone generator. I am saying that if you ordered a £40 pulse oximeter, it wouldn't break the bank. It would be an interesting little device anyway, and it is already popular and massively available on Amazon. Naturally, they have a bunch of other handy functions, and naturally, you can do your research and figure out whether these duty devices are a cheap and fun addition to your home, one per home I presume. You got a 350 quid Xbox for your kids. This might be rather more health supporting even without what may be possible. In other words, even if everything I'm about to share turned out to be wrong, it would be a tiny investment in a tiny device that would have a tiny negative impact, about £40, and apparently be handy and useful anyway for health monitoring. And yes, I own every manufacturing company for pulse oximeters, which companies I purchased having a full understanding of their potential use. Seriously? No, of course not seriously. I won't make a penny from this recommendation. Jesus. So what is their relevance to COVID-19? For that we need to play a game called ignorance. It should be easy, there's so much of that around. But this is a game of ignorance, and we're going to play it together. I found an article online, saved it, lost the link, no idea who it was or by or who or it was from, no idea how to get it back, and Google has no results for it either. All I have is these excerpts, and all I can do is look at them and go, that's interesting, I wonder. That is the game of ignorance we're going to play. If the article says, apples accelerate when dropped at 9.8 meters per second, then that's interesting. I wonder if I can test that. If the article says an apple a day keeps the doctor away, I'll go, I wonder if I could try that. If the article says catching an apple dropping from a tree demonstrates basic hand-to-eye coordination, I'll go, I get that. Let's go see if I have basic hand-to-eye coordination. If the article says if you don't want to wait for an apple to fall, have a friend lob one at you, I'll go, yeah, I could do that. Hey, Harry, do me a favour, lob me that apple. The point is you don't need to have an opinion on anything else to consider the following extremely simple elements. And if you do consider them, we have a path to normality regardless of testing, regardless of vaccine, and regardless of cure. So in this instance, just for a few minutes, ignorance really will be bliss, because you don't have to pay attention to anything other than some very simple suggestions, observations, and possibilities. And they are testable, affordable, and implementable. They're on Amazon, for God's sake. By us, testable by us, without waiting for the politicians, Big Pharma, Bill Gates, or anybody. And the one thing that you would very sensibly wait for, which shouldn't take more than a few moments by now, before implementing this instead of lockdown, would be for scientists to answer one simple question. Is it true that it is the lack of oxygen in a person's blood that gives the virus its deadly potency? Because the hint in the article I found in our game of ignorance is they're going after the virus as if it feeds on oxygen, and it actually feeds on lack of oxygen. And in our game of ignorance, in the article, it contained the following warning. It actually does some damage to your liver, it does some damage to your kidneys, it does some damage to almost all your internal organs, and anything you have that's a little short on oxygen, it can damage it. So it's really a much bigger killer than it's been led to be. But this isn't bad news, it's good news. In fact, it's excellent news. because the first thing you did when I mentioned pulse oximeters and Amazon was you went to Amazon and typed in pulse oximeters and you found dozens of them on offer. Hint, if what is in this article and in this video is eventually recognized by doctors and the government, there might be a run on pulse oximeters. Just saying. Anyone complaining, why didn't you tell us to buy one? Well, geez. Do what you will, always. That's free will. But please don't tell me I haven't done my best to inform you, even when the source or the nature or the content seem dodgy. My dodgy dossier is trying to help. So why is this excellent news in our game of ignorance? Because if the virus is massively dangerous to people with low blood oxygen, we want to make sure we're not someone with low blood oxygen. And it doesn't depend on the source, or on God, or on faith, or an imperial college, thank whatever. We just need all the world's scientists to stop for one brief moment and tell us, is this true? The Day the Earth Stood Still, original movie, still fantastic. That's what we need here. One brief moment of scientists' attention. Is this true? Is it true that the virus is massively damaging in lack of oxygen patients, and its corollary is essentially ineffective in high blood oxygen people with no other risk factors, heart disease, allergies, asthma, diabetes, etc.? If that is true, then lockdown is over. Why? Because if a killer tyrant is targeting firstborns under the age of 2, and you're over the age of 2 or not a firstborn, you're safe. Because if a killer tyrant is targeting people born under the Star of David, and that's not you, you're safe, but they are not. What are you going to do to help them? Because if your blood oxygen is over 100%, you're a god to the virus, move on. Over 95%, a saint, move on. Below 95%, human, fair game. And below 80%, easy prey, better prey, or get you to hospital or take action. Now, how simple should it be for scientists, the high priests, and as it turns out, dark priests of the modern age to give us their blessing as to the phenomenon, virus far deadlier in lack of blood oxygen environment, and the relative levels for risk. And yes, since 100% is actually 6%, you can be over 6%. So what would this marvelous possibility, and it is a marvelous possibility because it doesn't depend on vaccines, what would it look like? The government issues a decree. If you're 100% and above, go about your day without restriction, but respecting the fact that you can still be a carrier and distributor. It continues. If you're above 95%, below 100% implied, go about your day without restriction, but respecting the fact that you can still be a carrier and distributor, and you can still catch the virus and have symptoms, perhaps serious. It continues. If you're above 90%, go about your day with caution, avoid unnecessary contact, respect the fact that you can catch the virus and have symptoms, perhaps serious. It continues. If you're above 85%, we'd recommend staying in isolation where possible, and you must avoid contact. Respect the fact that you are at risk from the virus and are particularly vulnerable. If you're above 80%, you must stay in isolation except for critical errands, and you must avoid contact. Respect the fact that you are at high risk from the virus and are extremely vulnerable. If you are below 80%, you must stay in isolation and report your condition to the following hotline. You must avoid contact. We will want to examine you for your own immediate safety. Notwithstanding the above, if you have any of the following, you must consider yourself as at extremely high risk and stay in isolation. Heart problems, respiratory problems, e.g. asthma, allergies, diabetes, type 1 and type 2. It does not depend on a source whose identity may seem strange. It does not depend on a source whose content may seem suspect. It depends only on scientists doing a very simple test. Is the virus lethality dependent on blood oxygen levels? And if the scientists found that to be true, and if the government realised the opportunity, and if it asked the question, how can we measure people's blood oxygen levels, and if they realised, hey, how about pulse oximeters, and if they realised, hey, what a good idea, we make every family buy one, and might even pay for them on the NHS, now where can we get them? Some people might not want to wait for the government. And some people might realise they could order them from Amazon, and Amazon and suppliers might run out pretty quickly. Do you see where I'm going with this? My first 4 just arrived, not because I need 4 or am hoarding, but so I can test them and ensure they all give the same result, so that I can then inform you and tell you, yes, 3 gave the same result, but this one gave a higher misleadingly safe result. Watch this space. More than anything, do you see how this does not cure the virus? It does not protect you from the virus. Your blood oxygen level does that, if proven accurate. Your immune system does that, as we've always said. But it gets people who are essentially invulnerable over 100%, as a generalization, and extremely safe over 95%, and even reasonably safe over 90%, back out into society, into life, kick-starting our economy and saving us from incompetent and mendacious politicians and dark scientists who invent numbers and lie. They won't give us that answer until we start posing the question. So I suggest you start posing the question. Is the virus lethality dependent on blood oxygen levels? Get it out there. If you want to argue or don't like the game or have a better idea, fine. But is it so unreasonable a question, especially given the existing claims for oxygen and ozone? Is it so unreasonable a question to ask? And if it is a reasonable question and the rest of the results follow, we're out of lockdown for a rational, scientific, sound reason. Doesn't that seem like an excellent reason to at least pose the question? So I say again, and finally, if you want out of lockdown for a scientifically sound reason, share this. Share it wide. Scientists, pay attention. Is the virus lethality dependent on blood oxygen levels? Get it out there. And the answers are, and all I want is the assurance of consistency that they all give similar numbers for the 4 devices that have just arrived, chosen for reasonable cost, reasonable reviews, prompt delivery, not a recommendation, just for information. And having ordered a bunch, about 8 different boxes to test, not the best shorthand I guess, I also managed to order 4 of the same device. Brilliant, Andrew. Whatever. 30 seconds, and you don't need a device each, but since they sent us 4 of them, over 95%, that's me and my beloved. Virus ineffective, barring my type 2 diabetes. Pity that, but hey ho, the point is made. 30 seconds for such a simple test, and frankly you could knock me and my wife down with a feather that my levels are that high with 30 years of smoking. That's it, as simple as that. If you share and get the question answered, if the virus is ineffective above 95% blood oxygen, we're out of lockdown. Get the question out there. I'm still Andrew Mather, a 60-year-old Brit, mathematician, financier, technologist, husband, biker, pilot, healer, whatever. Feel free to get in touch, andrew@peerlessreads.com or andrew@amather.com. Either should get to me.